Today, I want to talk about a villain who gaslights, who manipulates, who turns everything the hero thinks they know against them. And I want to do it by talking about Rings of Power Season 2 and the character arcs of Celebrimbor and Annatar. Now, I want to be upfront here. Rings of Power has plenty of flaws, and I'm not denying that. But I'm not going to be talking about those flaws today. My purpose today is in discussing a specific story arc that I thought was spectacular and one that all story creators can learn from. So, I won't be talking about my annoyance with grimdark hobbits. I won't be talking about how much grand elves annoys me. I'm going to focus on the positive and learn what we can from this TV series. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Fair warning, this episode is loaded with spoilers. I am absolutely going to spoil most of Season 2 for you, so if you intend to watch it and you haven't yet watched it, be aware of that. If you don't intend to watch it, I will give you a recap of what I think is the best storyline in the season. First, we're going to actually just discuss the events, and then I will give you my analysis of why this works as a storyline and how you can apply it to your writing in a 5-step process of using a gaslighting or manipulative villain. All right, let's get going. So bright and early, Sauron poses as Hellbrand, and he returns to the gates of Eregion, where he refuses to leave. Now I do feel that it's important here to say that Celebrimbor at this point is in Eregion, right? And he's been told that he shouldn't deal with Hellbrand because at the end of season 1, it was revealed to Galadriel that Hellbrand is Sauron. But what we learn in season 2 is that Galadriel, though she warned Celebrimbor against Hellbrand, she didn't tell him that Hellbrand was Sauron. And the reason why she didn't tell him that Hellbrand was Sauron was because Galadriel herself is so embarrassed by the fact that she entirely missed this that she just doesn't tell him. And that ties into her story arc, which is much better executed in season 2 than it is in season 1. Because as I said in my video on season 1, which you can check out in the information card, Galadriel's storyline is about her learning humility, right? And in season 2, they really drive that point home very nicely. But disregarding that for the moment, let's focus on Celebrimbor. So Celebrimbor has promised Galadriel that he would not talk to Hellbrand again, but Hellbrand rocks up on Eregion's gate. So at first, Celebrimbor's like, no, but then eventually he approaches Hellbrand. And here's where Hellbrand starts his manipulation of Celebrimbor, right there at the gates. So Hellbrand bonds with Celebrimbor by telling him, no, your rings of power worked. Didn't the High King tell you? And Celebrimbor's like, no. And so he basically plays on Celebrimbor's kind of like feeling neglected by the Elven King to get Celebrimbor to invite Hellbrand in. And when they're alone, Hellbrand carefully leads Celebrimbor down the garden path where Hellbrand poses as a messenger of the Valar without ever directly saying he's a messenger of the Valar. And he introduces himself as Annatar, and Celebrimbor then names that as the Lord of Gifts. And Annatar says that their job is to make rings of power for dwarves and men. So he's basically led Celebrimbor down this path without ever directly saying any of this, right? And then Annatar pulls the trick that 100% seals Celebrimbor's fate. He manipulates Celebrimbor into writing a letter to Gil-galad, the High King of the Elves, where Celebrimbor lies to his king. And Annatar doesn't tell Celebrimbor to write the letter. He just gently guides him to the decision, softly shepherding him right over a cliff. Okay. So then we move on to them actually making the dwarven rings. Celebrimbor and Annatar ask the dwarves for mithril. Durin the Third provides it, despite Durin the Fourth's distrust of Annatar, and the ring making commences. All right, then they hand over the first of the rings to Durin the Third, and he uses one of the new rings of power to help rebuild the dwarves' infrastructure and to bring sunlight back to Khazad-dûm. But the ring also makes the king greedy, and he dismisses a warning from Disa, from Durin the Fourth's wife, that they could be awakening something evil that lives beneath the mines. Yes, I know this presents certain canon problems for later on in the story. I don't know how they're going to fix that or if they're going to fix that. As I said, focusing on this storyline right now. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got the dwarves getting greedy, which is important because Durin the Fourth is now going to return to Eregion with this news. In the meantime, back in Eregion, Annatar is insisting that they start their work on the rings of power for men, but Celebrimbor refuses to be involved, saying that men are too risky to make rings for. But that's when the killing blow comes. See, Durin the Fourth comes and he expresses his concern about the dwarven rings to Celebrimbor. And then Annatar suggests that the negative impacts on the dwarven rings are caused because Celebrimbor lied to Gil-galad about making more rings. And Annatar says to Celebrimbor that the way to counter this is by admitting to Gil-galad that Celebrimbor had lied to him. And instead of taking this honorable path, Celebrimbor says, no, we will forge the rings of men to redeem my work on the dwarven rings. It was a masterstroke of manipulation by Annatar. It makes Celebrimbor doubt his own work, doubt his honesty, and enforce his dependence on Annatar, all in one, tying back to that lying letter. Okay. So they're making the rings of men, and Celebrimbor's focus is 100% on this. And then when Annatar offers to take care of Eregion's ministration, and he gives Celebrimbor a container which he claims to hold mithril. Now the reader suspects that it might or might not be mithril, because at this point, Durin the Third denied Annatar more mithril. But the viewer doesn't know for sure what's in the container that Annatar gave, Celebrimbor. Anyway, so Annatar is now expanding his influence to the people around Celebrimbor, and he convinces them that Celebrimbor is falling to darkness and is growing in corruption. All right, so all that's happening at Eregion. In another storyline, Adar is leading his orcs to besiege Eregion, and here is where Annatar shines again. This time, he ensures that Celebrimbor is unaware of the siege by using illusion magic. And Annatar takes care of the defense of Eregion, basically turning the defenders of Eregion against Celebrimbor by showing Celebrimbor as being entirely out of touch. Okay, so the orcs aim their trebuchet at the mountains beyond the city and causes a rock slide that blocks up the river upstream, and this allows the orcs to actually assault the city walls on foot. And all this is happening while Celebrimbor is still forging the men's ring, the 9 rings for men. And at last, Celebrimbor notices that something is wrong in his illusionary world. he notices that a mouse is basically staying on a pattern, like a deja vu incident, a glitch in the matrix. He then confronts Annatar, who ends the illusion and reveals that Celebrimbor has made the 9 rings using Sauron's blood rather than mithril, and that Eregion's under attack. Again, there's some really great gaslighting here, with Annatar playing on what Morgoth did to Sauron and saying that he'd only been acting as he had, Annatar, had only been acting as he had to help Celebrimbor. But Celebrimbor has finally seen through Annatar to the true Sauron below, and he attempts to escape with the 9 rings and finds Galadriel. And they have a great moment where they both realize that their arrogance has led them to this point. Anyway, so Galadriel takes the rings and runs, while Celebrimbor stays to delay Sauron. And as the siege comes to its devastating end, Sauron kills Celebrimbor. And with his dying words, Celebrimbor, with Tolkien's clarity of vision in death, tells Annatar, Sauron, that he is actually a slave to the rings, not their master. And then Celebrimbor dies. It really was so well done. Every time Charlie and Charles were on screen, it was glorious. They played so well together, and the arc was so well written. Their dialogue worked so well. The gaslighting worked so well. You could feel Celebrimbor going down the garden path, and you could feel the depth of his horror when he finally snapped out of it and realized what he had done and what was going on around him, and the extent to which he'd betrayed not just himself, but also his people who looked to him for leadership and protection. It was devastating to him, and it was brilliantly done. Really, genuinely brilliantly done. Okay, so what can we as writers learn from this arc? So these steps should help you understand how to create a gaslighting manipulative villain. 1. Patience and subtlety in manipulation is critical. Annatar's manipulation is not rushed. He takes his time, guiding Celebrimbor step by step, leading Celebrimbor to make his own conclusions. A great manipulative villain doesn't force the hand of the person they're manipulating, but subtly influences the target's thinking, letting the victim believe the ideas are their own. Writers should focus on gradual shifts in the character's behavior and beliefs, allowing the villain to slowly infiltrate their psyche. Don't rush the manipulation. Slow, subtle steps are far more impactful as they give the victim time to absorb and internalize the false reality. 2. Play on insecurities and existing biases. Annatar plays on Celebrimbor's pre-existing emotions, his isolation as a smith, and the need for validation from his king. By tapping into these insecurities, he makes Celebrimbor susceptible to his influence. A manipulative villain should exploit the vulnerabilities of their target to create emotional dependence. Use the hero's insecurities and biases against them. A villain should understand what their target fears or desires and subtly weave that into their manipulation. 3. Gaslighting through contradictory realities. Throughout the arc, Annatar presents half-truths, contradictory realities, and even uses illusion to obscure the truth from Celebrimbor, making Celebrimbor question his perception of reality. This is classic gaslighting. The hero is made to doubt their reality, to doubt their lying eyes, and this creates confusion and vulnerability in the hero. A great villain subtly alters reality to make the victim question themselves, eventually doubting even their core beliefs. Alter the victim's perception of reality just enough to keep them off balance. Make them doubt their memory, their instincts, and ultimately, themselves. 4. Make the hero complicit in their own fall. Annatar doesn't just manipulate Celebrimbor. He leads him to actively lie to Gil-galad and involves himself in morally questionable actions, all under the guise of doing something noble. This complicity makes the hero feel trapped, deepening their emotional turmoil and reliance on the villain. The best manipulative villains are those who get the hero to take actions that compromise their moral standing. Force the hero into making their own bad choices. By making the hero complicit in these bad choices, they are much less likely to break free of the villain's manipulation. And 5. The final revelation is devastating. When Celebrimbor finally realizes the depth of Annatar's deception, it is not just a revelation of Annatar's true identity, but of the hero's own downfall. The emotional impact is doubled because Celebrimbor recognizes how deeply he's been manipulated, and the consequences of his actions are irreversible. A great gaslighting villain leaves the hero questioning not only the villain, but also the hero's own judgment. The final revelation should not only reveal the villain's plot, but should devastate the hero emotionally. The victim must face their own involvement in their own downfall, amplifying the emotional stakes of the story. Using these lessons, you can create a villain who is not just a threat in terms of physical power, but also in terms of psychological warfare, turning the hero's strengths and weaknesses against them. Who do you think is the best gaslighting, manipulative villain in fantasy that you've read or seen? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this take on Rings of Power Season 2, and if you like what I do here and want to support the channel financially, you can join the channel here on YouTube. And for the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can enjoy all kinds of cool perks like members-only live stream or early access to my videos. You can even get shoutouts like this one to Aya, Tiffany, Patricio, and Dylan of the Build It in Wood level, and Katie and Tony of the Build It in Stone level. However, please don't feel pressured or obligated to support the channel financially. You can also show your support just by watching another video, which lets the algorithm know that my content is worth caring about. And since you enjoyed this video, maybe check out my video on how norms create great motivation for characters and stories. And I will see you soon for another video from Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.